ex. He talks to his ex daily. He says they're just friends. But this situation makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I don't know how to handle it with him without feeling attacked. So how should I bring this up? Okay, that's a fair question. If you say as far as how do I bring this up without him feeling attacked, I think what you mean is how do I bring it up without him, reacting really poorly or acting really horribly. The sort of status or the standard that I use if you're bringing up something is, number one, as much as it might feel like the man's doing something wrong, and in some instances the man is doing something wrong, my hesitation with that is that gets into be somewhat subjective. Some things are right and wrong. You're married, you're having an affair where you broke your agreement, that's wrong. You're lying, that's wrong. If you start doing that, that's usually what most of the time people and men react to really strongly with. So I don't know that I would do the you shouldn't and it's so wrong approach, because it makes him defensive, which is I think is what you're talking about. Now, with that in mind, I can certainly see your point as far as that making you uncomfortable. The line that I tell women to use, and I'll go through this, is where you tell him, when you're talking with Susan, Jennifer, whatever her name is, the ex, I say that doesn't make me happy. And that's all you say. Now, most of the time a man will look at you and he may go, so, if he's in a really bad mood, or he'll go, what? But what I know about men is that if a man's dating you, him making you happy is really important to him. And more so that if he feels like you're unhappy, it bothers men. Now, if it doesn't bother a man at all, then that's probably a different question, because that's going to come out in other ways. He's going to show up late all the time. He's going to talk harshly to you in public. I mean, there'll be other ways if he just doesn't care at all. But when you say that to him, and you have to bring it up from time to time as a situation comes up, what it does, it starts to eat at him. I've had a number of clients that have done this. So this has been tested, at least a fair amount. And it starts to bother a man. And after a while, it eats at him and gnaws at him. And the choice for him ends up being, is it worth it to keep this up? Is it worth it to keep? Because if this was his sister and you didn't like him talking to his sister, in his mind, he's going to say, it's not worth giving up my sister for this woman, or if it was his mother. But most of the time, if it's next girlfriend or something, the choice being him or you, that's how he begins to decide. This isn't the same thing, I realize, but I've seen the same thing work with a woman who's married and they just had a small child and her husband was smoking pot. And if you've ever been around someone or know someone, or even if you're one of those that smokes pot, trying to tell them that it's wrong really works bad. I mean, especially now they've changed some of the laws in states here in America. And what she did was the same thing. Is when you smoke pot, it doesn't make me happy. And she had to do that a few times, but that was the response. She didn't argue, and she kept with it. And it took about 4 months, but I remember the day he came in, and he was like, fine, I'll give up pot. See, he didn't want to. And she wasn't going to convince him that it was a good idea. That was working terrible for years. But it wasn't worth living with and being with an unhappy woman, because she didn't whine, she didn't, scream and holler and stuff, but she kept that up, and it was a form of outlasting him. So I would try that, and that'll give you some idea as far as him and his motivation. But I found that to be fairly effective with men. So I got this one, so let me qualify this one first. This is going to be something I can't answer right away, but I want to give you an idea, because there may be some people that listen to this that are of the Christian persuasion, and I'm assuming this is serious enough. How can I please God in my marriage and train my children in the fear and teachings of Jesus Christ? Well, probably a little more in depth than we would typically go here. But let me sort of give you an overview, because I don't know that it's that different as far as within a marriage. That it's, if you're married, one of the biggest things your husband is going to want is that you respect him. And that's not a blank check. And conversely, one of the things a wife is going to want is that her husband loves her. Now, the difference with this is I think a lot of times what we read or see in movies is we're not talking about something that happens as the result of. I'll respect my husband when he does so many things right, or the husband says, I'll love my wife when she's respectful to me and nice. This is something that you make it a point to implement every week. I mean, I would say every moment, but that's unrealistic. And because for a man, being loving to his wife constantly, it's not natural in the sense of that's not something he thinks about all the time. For men, a lot of times, once they enter a marriage, it's kind of like a contract in the sense of I married you, I'm assuming you know that I love you, so now we're a team working on a task. And as far as being attentive and loving, excuse me, it doesn't come as natural to him. So therefore, for him, it's a habit. At least I'm talking to a husband. Be loving to your wife. Do those gestures. Don't wait until you feel like it. Make it a habit that will actually stir up your passions. To a wife, I would say, when can you be respectful? When can you point out things that you like? We're not talking about lying or making stuff up. And when both the husband and the wife do those together, it tends to feed off each other. So, and in doing so, that's actually one of the best things you could do for children. When children see that mom and dad do that, that actually makes them feel really secure about the marriage. It makes them want to understand what it is you believe. They're more susceptible is not the right word, but they're more likely to like what it is because you're not only teaching them certain things, but you're showing it out and you're living it as well. From Stacy, I believe. My husband and I